All right, welcome to Procreate. My name is Anna Markowitz. I am a digital artist, muralist, fine art painter from Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm here to just teach you how to use Procreate. If you don't know what Procreate is, it is a graphic design software that, in my opinion, is the best freaking app that is out there. This thing has completely changed my life. It has changed the trajectory of where my art has gone. It's turned me into a digital artist. It's so fun, really relaxing to do, and it's super easy to use. Like anybody can do it. So I'm going to show you how to just kind of jump in and be able to create anything that you want just based off this basics video. So let's get into it. So the first thing you're going to see when you open up Procreate is your gallery. So this is where all of your projects are stored, and you can organize them however you see fit by just simply clicking select and then stacking similar items. So here's the stack button, and it'll put them all in the same folder. If you want to move things around, you can simply hold it, drag it, and move it up. The first thing we're going to do when we see this page is create a new canvas. So we're going to click this little plus sign at the top here, and you can either choose a pre-made canvas / all of your saved canvases will go here, or we're going to make a new one by clicking this little plus button right up here. So this is going to open up all of your canvas settings. So it's going to start with dimensions. Just for this one, I'm going to make it the screen size, which is 2048 by 2732 pixels. You can also work in inches, and I find that really helpful when I'm making prints, because if I know what size I want a print or poster to be, I can just work directly with that size. And then for the DPI, we're going to make sure it's 300. This is going to ensure that we have a really good resolution. Okay, so then we are going to go ahead and click create. So this is the main Procreate interface, and this is what you're really going to get familiar with and get used to seeing, because every single project that you work with is going to start off looking like this. As you can see, there are 3 main toolbars, so let's start by taking a look at these two. So if you click this button right here, it's going to open up your brush library. This is all of the digital brushes that come with Procreate, plus some other folders that I've created, downloaded, etc. What I recommend is just diving in by just clicking any brush that looks like it might be fun and just sort of playing around with it. So these toolbars right here are going to adjust the size of the brush and the opacity of it. So really have fun with this part and just start getting used to what these brushes do. So you can use it with light pressure, hard pressure, see what it looks like that, make it bigger and see what it does, lower the opacity. And you can just do that with any brush and have fun with it and start to get used to it. And this is really how you're going to start to understand what brushes are best for certain effects. You really just have to dive in and familiarize yourself with it. If you want to zoom in to a section on your canvas, you just take your fingers and pinch and pull apart, and then you can rotate your hand to turn the canvas around. These buttons right here are going to be your undo and your redo. If you don't feel like pressing that and you're working really quickly, there's also gesture controls for it. So to undo, you're going to take 2 fingers and tap, tap, tap. If you see me missing a nail, mind your business. And then you can also hold it down and it will undo it. And then to redo, it's 3 fingers. So tap, 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 or you can hold down. Now, these 2 buttons right here work very similar to the brush. So right here is your blend button, and if you click it, it'll also open up a brush library. And then the same thing applies with the eraser. So let's say I want to have a particular texture with this eraser. I'm going to choose this textured brush, and then we can see what that does. So play around with that, click other brushes, see what they do, what lowering the opacity does, what increasing the opacity does, and just start to familiarize yourself with the different features on Procreate. So now we're going to take a look at the colors. So there's a few different interfaces for these colors, and that's whichever one you use is going to be totally up to personal preference. If you want to use this one, you can change the hue by circling this part and the saturation by circling this part. You can also get perfect colors by double tapping on the different points of this, and it'll take you to I think there's like 5 main points on this that are perfect colors. I prefer to use this one, which is like the classic. You can change the hue up here, the vibrance, or the saturation, and then the lightness and darkness of it. And now for the palettes. So this is one of my favorite things to use. I pretty much open up a palette for every new project I'm doing because it's a really good way to stay organized. You can make a new palette by clicking this plus button up here, create new palette, and then any color that you select on here, if you go back to the classic, your new palette is down here, and any color that you end up choosing, you just click right there and it'll add the color to your library. To delete a swatch, you can just hold down and click delete. And then if you want to move one around, you can hold it down and drag it and it'll move it. So one of my favorite features about the palette is really cool, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So first you open up your palettes right here, and then you're going to swipe up from the bottom and hold down on your Photos app and drag it to the left. Then you're going to move this little dial over so it's smaller. Open up your palettes, and let's say I have a picture on here and I really want to use the same color as it. I will simply hold down the photo and drag it here, and then wait for it. It will create an entire palette based off that picture. Freaking awesome. And then when you go back, to your classics page, it's right there waiting for you. So when you're playing around with the smudge tool or the blending tool, it's really fun to try to test out the different colors. So the first thing we're going to do is pick out a brush we like. I'm going to pick this Salamanca brush, and let's add some pink right there and then some blue from my palette. To smudge it, we're just going to click this, open up a brush that we like, and then just kind of play around with it. You can see what this does to the painting. Looks kind of weird, but have fun with it. Now we're going to take a look at the layers. So this is the most, in my opinion, the most important feature to pay attention to in Procreate, because this is how you're going to get all the advantages of digital art, which is to be able to change things and not have to, create stuff in a particular order. So like in traditional painting, you paint the background first and then the foreground second, because it's really difficult to try to get clean lines when you paint the background after. With digital art, you can do in any order that you choose, and as long as they're in different layers, they won't affect each other. So the first thing we're going to do is click on this double square button right here. This is going to open up our layers palette. So the layers start off with 2 automatic layers. The first one is the background color. So the background color is a totally separate layer from the other things, and you can just simply select it by clicking on that layer and then, moving your hue around to whatever you choose. So I'm going to choose this light gray. Then we're just going to open this up again, and as you can see, we have this other layer on top. I'm going to go ahead and clear this layer by swiping to the right and clicking clear. So there's a few basic features to understand with the layers. To add a new one, you just simply click this plus button. To delete, swipe to the right, click delete. And you can also duplicate by sliding to the right and clicking duplicate. Every single layer has its own, like 2 separate settings. So if you click the layer, it'll open up these settings on the left. And then if you click right here, it'll open up these settings on the right. So I'll show you what those can do in just a second. So I'm going to create a circle here, and you can either do that by, filling in your own, but if you want a perfect circle, you're just going to draw a circle and then hold your mouse still, and then, which will create like a little bit of a more cleaner line, but if you want it to be a perfect circle, then you're going to take your other hand and simply press down and then release. Now we're going to fill this in by just dragging this little dot over here, and it'll automatically fill it in. Then each layer has its own individual settings. So the first one happens when you click the layer. It'll open up these settings on the left. And then the second one occurs when you click this little N right here. So here you can lower the opacity of your layer or mess around with these settings and kind of just see what they do to the layers underneath it. Now I'm going to show you some of my most used features with these layers. So the first thing you can do is engage alpha lock. So the way you do that is you take 2 fingers and you swipe to the left. So that'll engage alpha lock, and you can see this little grid behind it, which lets you know that it is happening. What this does is it means that anything that you draw inside this layer is going to stay within the lines of that layer. So that's one way. To get the same result, there's also another thing that you can do, which I personally prefer because I like to keep all of my layers separate. This is called the clipping mask. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and undo what I just did. And now we can see alpha lock is disengaged. And I'm going to do what's called a clipping mask. So I'm going to create a new layer. And then I'm going to tap this and click clipping mask. This is going to do the exact same thing as the alpha lock, but it's going to be in a different layer, so it's not going to affect the layer underneath it. Now I'm just going to click on the brush palette and find a brush that I think looks cool, and then let's just start to add some cool effects to this. So just see what this does. I'm going to start off dark on this side and then add some more. Now we have this cool little thing. Let's add some more bright red. So now we have this cool little shape thing, and then the clipping mask can be removed and added. You can erase it, and it just won't do anything to the layer underneath it. I like to do this because it just gives me a little bit more room for error. Now, as you start to create a piece, you're going to have a ton of these layers, and so there's different ways that you can organize them. And with certain sizes on Procreate, like depending on the size of your canvas, you may only be able to have a certain amount of layers. So to merge a layer, you just simply pinch it together. You can move a layer by holding it down and moving it underneath it. And you can also group layers by swiping to the left on any layers you want grouped together and clicking group. So once you have a good feel for the layers, you can start to mess around a little bit more. So I'm going to add this new layer here and just show you some of the other tricks that I like to do on Procreate. So to create a perfect line, you're going to do something similar to what you did with the circle. You're going to draw a line and then simply hold your mouse still. Then you can move the line around until you lift it up, and it'll create a perfect line for you. You can also, if you do the same thing and you hold it down, it'll move it. If you put your finger down, it'll move this in 15-degree increments. So now I'm going to show you guys how to use this toolbar up here. So first of all, I'm going to open up this little layer group again, and I'm going to go ahead and delete this layer. So up here is some of the most used features on Procreate as well. First of all, this little mouse right here is going to be your selection tool. So this is how you're going to move objects around. You can increase the size down here. If you look at these features below, this is set in uniform, which means that everything is going to stay proportional no matter how big or smaller you make it. Or you can do freeform, which is just going to change the top and bottom. Or you can distort it. And then lastly, you can warp it. Whatever you do, just make sure that any way you're moving it, that this is set to either bilinear or bicubic. This is going to make sure it's still like high resolution whenever you move it. So I'm going to click undo. And I'm going to just move this a little bit in the middle. And then let's get into the other features. So this little button right here is your selection tool. So if you click this and you move your rectangle over here, it's going to select this layer and you can move it around. If you have other objects inside this layer, like let's say I have a little circle right here and I only want to select this circle and move it to a different layer, I'll just simply click the selection button, click whichever one I choose. There's rectangle, which just makes one automatically, or there's freehand, which means that you can just draw it around. Whatever you choose, you're going to circle it and then click the mouse, and now this layer can be moved around. If you want it to be in a completely different layer, because right now this is both in the same layer, then you can go over to this little settings right here and click cut, and then I'm going to open up a new layer and click paste, and now this is in a totally different layer. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and delete that one and show you these other tools. So automatic is good if you want to remove the background. Like let's say there was a background underneath this. Let's go ahead and add a layer so I can show you. Drag this underneath, pull this down. That actually looks really cool, but I'm just gonna show you guys how to do this. Oh, they have to be in the same layer. Okay. So now you are just going to click the selection tool, automatic, and you're going to drag to the right or to the left. And as you can see, it's only selecting part of it. So let's say I only want this part selected and I don't want the rest of the background there. I am simply going to click this button, click cut, and now it has removed everything except for that part. And then I'm just going to undo all of that because I actually really like this red. And I'm going to go ahead and merge. Yeah, okay, perfect. These layers are already merged. Okay. So this little button right here is all of your effects. So if I want to change the hue, saturation, brightness, I'm going to click this part up here. I like to do this towards the end of the pieces. And, you know, if I'm not like totally sure on what I want, then this can be really good. And yeah, I'm going to click undo. There's also a bunch of other really cool features on here. I really like the Gaussian blur, which is great if you're trying to make backgrounds. You simply click it, and then you can swipe to the left depending on how fuzzy that you want it to be. I'm going to undo that. And then you can also do liquify, which is a really, really fun one. So all you do is just hold your mouse down. It has all these little different features that you can mess around with. Let's see what this does. Just tons of cool stuff that you can do with this. All right, I'm gonna go back. Okay, so I recommend just playing around with all of these different features, and as you get more familiar with them, you'll just have like way more ideas of what you can do in Procreate. It's just like totally limitless. Now, the last features that I use all the time are going to be to insert a photo or insert a file. So this is great if you want to trace something. So you can click either insert photo and it'll pull from your photo library. But if you don't want it to show up in your time lapse, because Procreate has a feature where it will record a time lapse of everything you do. If you don't want the photo in there, you can simply swipe to the left and click insert a private photo. And this, I'm pull up this picture of this bread for some reason. First picture that came to mind. Let's say I want to trace these rolls of bread. I can simply lower the opacity of this layer, put a layer on top, and then trace it. And it will not show up in my time lapse. Next is the canvas feature. So first of all, you can open up a reference on Procreate by clicking this little part right here. And if you click image, you can import a reference. So let's say I want to draw that bread again, just pull it down here. And now it's right there any way I need it. I can move it around. I can make it bigger or smaller, and then I can zoom into it as well. To get rid of it, you can either click this X or you can go back up here and click that off. Then the last thing that I think is really cool is the drawing guide. So if you turn that on, it'll open up a grid. And this doesn't seem that useful at first glance, but if you click edit drawing guide, there's a bunch of features on here that are really cool. So first of all, you can increase your grid size if you want your lines to be clean, if you want to, work within this. Or, and I think this is such a fun way to start for anybody that's new, you can open up the symmetry guide. So I'm going to click options and click radial, and this is really fun. So first of all, I'm going to move this point into the middle of my circle here. That way anything I add to this will look really cool. Okay, so I'm going to click done, and then I'm going to open up a new layer. Now this new layer isn't going to have the drawing assistant unless you click it and click drawing assistant. And now we can really get into this. Let's click from my palette down here, and then you can just start to have fun with this. This is like the most satisfying feature to me. I freaking love it. It's a lot of fun. Highly recommend it. Then to turn off your drawing guide, just simply click this and turn it off. Let's say I don't like that layer too, or I want to adjust that layer. What's cool about Procreate is that it's not going to affect any of the layers underneath it. And I think that is a very cool thing. Then when you are all ready and you like your piece, go ahead and sign it. And then freaking export this thing. So you're going to click share. You can export it as any of these files. And you can also take a look at your time-lapse replay. So if I click this right here, It'll replay the thing in not a super fast speed. Like if I spent like 30 hours on this would take forever. But you can take your finger and drag to the left or right to see it. And you can also export it as a 30-second video. I hope this helps. I'm going to have a lot more videos coming out of all the different things that you can do in Procreate and different projects that you can follow along with me on. But just dive in. I mean, the hardest part is just to freaking start, and it will start to get more familiar with you, you know? Let me know if you guys have any questions at all. I can make any video answering any question. I just want to help y'all. So yeah, let me know. I really hope this was helpful. Bye.